جومانا مدلج خطاطة بريطانية لبنانية متخصصة في الخط الكوفي تقيم في لندن. أنجزت مدلج أعمالاً فنية غنية بالتفاصيل والجماليات بيعت في جميع أنحاء العالم. ينبع اهتمامها بالخط الكوفي من التقنيات الهندسية القديمة للفن الإسلامي. اكتشف رحلتها في الانتقال من كونها كمتدربة إلى تقديمها دورات في هذا النمط القديم من الخط.
Hello, my name is Owen, and welcome to this episode in an exciting series of podcast discussions. We are interviewing prominent British Arabs, and in today's episode, I will be talking with Joumana Medlej, a British-Lebanese artist and Kufic calligrapher. مرحبا بكم، أنا اسمي أوين، واليوم أنا مع جومانا ميدليج، هي خطاط من لبنان، لكن أهلا تسكن بلندن. أهلا وسهلا جومانا، فرصة سعيدة. Wonderful to meet you, and thanks for showing me around your lovely studio today. I'd like to know your story, your background, and what brought you to where you are and what you do.
Well, my background, in terms of creative background, I studied graphic design. I explored a lot of artistic areas for quite a few years. I tried a lot of different things, but what really made a difference is my teacher, Samir Sayegh, out of the blue invited me to be his assistant and work with him in his studio. So I went there for years. I would go and we would work together, and it was kind of a traditional apprenticeship.
And then this became what you do.
Look at this, you know, like whoa.
I look around and I see so many wonderful pieces, and they are all in this.
No idea how it happened, but yes.
Wonderful style. And so I suppose this is, I mean, your work is based in Kufi script or Kufic script, and this is sort of like an ancient form of calligraphy, right?
Yeah, I mean, more specifically now, because things have evolved, my work is based in the Abbasid era of Islamic art. So it is Kufic. The Kufic is definitely a big part of it, but it's also the materials and the media and subjects. It's all kind of coming together for me. And Kufic is the first calligraphic style of Arabic.
Okay.
You know, the writing did exist before, and then it evolved. But then at one point, very suddenly, like around the year 700, Kufic suddenly appeared. So it was designed very consciously to be beautiful, to have certain proportions, certain geometric consistency.
What are some of the sort of attributes of Kufic script that would identify it as, you know, standing out?
It has a geometric basis in the sense that it is called the rectilinear script, which is a bit of a misnomer if you think it means it's made up of straight lines. What this means is that it's mapped on a rectilinear grid. So when you learn to write Kufi, whether with a pen, which is by hand, or by constructing it, this grid is always present. And it's a completely different calligraphy tradition to the later tradition, which is what still exists today. They're completely different.
Okay.
And if you learn Kufic and you have already a background in the later tradition, you will be shocked at how alien it is. You know, the letters change, the logic changes, and definitely the grid doesn't exist anymore afterwards.
Well, there were two things that I saw that really interested me. First of all, I think you recently released a rendition of Saint Francis of Assisi.
Oh, wow, you saw that? Yes.
Yeah. Canticle of the Creatures. It's an extremely beautiful piece.
Thank you.
Can I ask what inspired you to produce this work, and also the process that you used, especially now knowing that you use natural pigments?
That piece. I started it at the beginning of the year. I was looking at this very beautiful Quran that is known as the Carmation Quran. It's very unique. Everybody knows it. There's only one of the kind, but the leaves are scattered around in various collections. And so I looked at all the photos of it I could find online, because sadly I've never seen any of the leaves in person. And I noticed, and I could tell what the materials were from looking at them to an extent, because the tradition is a bit predictable. Mm-hmm. And most of them, the background is kind of faded brown, but in some of them you can see the background is very colorful. And I was like, okay, that thing must have been, and I wanted to see what it must have looked like when it was freshly made. And also as an exercise for me to try to write with this style, because I'm trying to reconstruct this.
I saw another of your collections that I found stood out a little differently, because I noticed with a lot of your work. Anyway, this one stood out. It was the Conference of the Birds.
Yeah.
And I liked with this one because something that I found interesting was the use of the calligraphy within this particular collection. So, I mean, it sort of acted as an object within the art as well, whilst also describing it. I think I saw For example, an owl sitting on the word for owl in Arabic, which is Uma, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, how is that different to the art you usually create?
It was so different. It really was a one-off, that series.
Yeah.
And I think it was, I wanted to do something that was more illumination in style, more like Western illumination with these small details. And at the same time, I love birds. It was at the point where I was still transitioning to natural materials. So I wasn't very fluent in the egg tempera. So I was a bit hesitant.
Could you explain what that is?
Yeah, egg tempera is basically when you mix pigments with egg yolk.
Okay.
It's a beautiful medium. I love it. It's gorgeous, but it does require some fluency because it dries very quickly. So you have to work. You can't leave it lying around. You have to organize your work so that you use the paint while it's fresh, because once it's dried, it's done, and your precious pigments are, lapis lazuli is expensive.
Right, yes, I'm sure.
So you kind of have to mix more quantities and work. You have to really plan the layers, the order in which you work, and what goes over. So it's quite a thing.
You said something that I found really interesting. You were talking about this concept, or this idea behind the art that you do, and especially Kufic script. And you said, the geometric compositions refers not to the world of forms, but to a cosmic order.
Right.
And
yes.
I really want to hear more about that because.
Well, that's what it's about. That's what Kufic is about. It is the reason they gave it this geometric basis, and these. There's nothing arbitrary in Kufic. It's not. You can say it's almost not man-made because it all falls into place in a certain way, and that is the whole point, because it was designed to embody the Quran, the divine word. It was not used for anything. It couldn't be used for anything else. It requires a lot of focus. It's very slow to work in, and when you're working on it and you're really immersed in it, you're not there. But the whole point of geometry, geometry is very dominant in Islamic art, and the reason that is dominant rather than a human representation is not that it's taboo to draw humans. It's why draw humans when you can draw the divine, which is represented in these incomprehensible but very striking geometric patterns where you can't wrap your mind around them, but you feel something, right? You feel something beyond the human. That's the whole point.
You were talking about your students, actually. I know you teach at the Arab British Centre.
Yes.
I mean, how was that experience? When did you begin that, and what kind of work do you do?
I started in 2014, so shortly after I came here.
Okay.
And I've been teaching there steadily, but the courses have evolved. So in the beginning, it was a very kind of general, encompassing Kufic course, and then I realized actually that's not good enough because each of the styles can take so much more.
Okay, so I mean, another sort of question is. With Al-Fanar and Podium, this intersection, this project that we're working on is about prominent British Arabs. I mean, what does this mean to you? Does it mean anything? How do you...
What does this mean to me? It doesn't mean anything to me personally, to be honest. I don't really... National identities really don't mean anything to me. I'm happy to be here.
It's complex, isn't it? It's not...
It's complex, it's personal, and it doesn't... not everybody has to feel allegiance to a country. I mean, even, my country of birth, what do I owe to it? I owe nothing to it. It's taken everything from me and it's given me absolutely nothing. So, I care for my people, but to the country as a political entity, no, nothing. It has not earned anything from me.
Do you think your work reflects the current state of...
No, actually that's a very good question.
Okay.
Because I'm not interested in the current state, because all things will pass. There is something that does not change. There is something real, because everything that's happening right doesn't feel real. I mean, it doesn't. It's like a puppet show. It's really weird. So sometimes I do work that maybe has been triggered by something happening, but I always refer it back to something timeless.
Like a constant I see with this piece, Loss, for example, you could relate it to the pandemic, but ultimately
also,
loss is timeless, isn't it?
Yeah, it can be a small personal loss, and it can be much bigger. So it's not. I never tie my work to something current, because what is current is very fleeting.
You said previously that you started off in graphic design. How was that transition for you, going from graphic design? I'm gonna, I assume you had a strong bearing in, artistry beforehand.
I got my degree and I ran off.
Yeah. What was the
No,
what was the process of like sort of coming out of graphic design, maybe coming out of I think maybe like a corporate kind of environment of trying to.
Yeah, well, the thing is, I went into graphic design in the first place because I was artistic, but I wanted to be practical, and I knew I wouldn't. My parents would not be too happy if I went for an arts degree, so I went for a graphic design degree, thinking, well, at least it's creative, and then realizing how horrible a mistake that was. And it's just a horrible feeling. Oh my God, am I really going to spend my life giving my blood to nothing, to something that is completely pointless? But it's only when I moved to London that I completely stopped doing any kind of other work. Because I did freelance and various things. But when I moved here, I was like, okay, I'm moving to London, I'm going to focus totally on this.
In that sort of area, I wonder, maybe as a final question, if you could, or if you had any words, or if you had anything to say about, or say to young people who are aspiring to go into the kind of work that you do, in any form of artistry or any form of creative work that, if we're honest, sometimes requires a lot of, or sometimes encounters a lot of difficulty in getting to where you want to be.
Yeah, I mean, first I'll say it is going to be difficult. If you expect an art career to be easy, you're in the wrong field. But you get rewarded accordingly. You have to be ready to take the risk. But I would say they have to find the strength and the integrity to do work that comes truly from within them. If you want to really work with your own creativity, you have to be able to completely ignore anything outside yourself. And it might have nothing to do with anything, and you will think nobody will get it. But this is the only truth you have, so you have to stick to it.
Thank you very much, Joumana, for allowing me here in your studio. It's such a wonderful place.
Oh, you're very kind. I mean, I need to clean it.
No, but there's a lot of lovely art pieces here. Thank you very much. Shukran jazilan.
شكرا.
التقت جومانا مدلج الخطاطة البريطانية اللبنانية المتخصصة في الخط الكوفي بأوين ويليامز لإجراء حوار حول أعمالها الفنية في الاستوديو الخاص بها في شرق لندن. تتحدث مدلج عن جمال الفن والخط الإسلامي وقصة انخراطها فيه بعد تلقيها تدريباً في ورشة متخصصة لأحد الفنانين. في الآونة الأخيرة لجأت إلى استخدام الطلاء والأصباغ الطبيعية في عملها مستخلص المواد من الطبيعة المحيطة بها. ومع ازدياد شعبية أعمالها بدأت مدلج تقديم دورات في الخط الكوفي وتأمل في مواصلة اكتشاف المزيد من هذا الشكل القديم من أشكال الخط العربي. هذا البودكاست إنتاج مشترك بين الفنار للإعلام وبوديوم.me وبتمويل من منحة المعهد الدولي للصحافة IPI. نشكر أوين ويليامز وجومانا مدلج لمشاركتهما في هذه الحلقة.